There is a subtle but powerful force that shapes the way you think, act, and even define your identity, yet most people are not fully aware of its influence. It is the constant need for validation. At first glance, this desire appears completely normal. After all, humans are social beings. We want to feel accepted, appreciated, and understood. However, when this natural desire turns into dependence, it begins to control your decisions in ways that quietly limit your freedom. Seeking validation becomes dangerous when it shifts from being a preference to being a requirement. Instead of asking yourself what you truly want, you begin asking what others will approve of. This shift may seem small, but it fundamentally changes the way you live. Your choices are no longer guided by your values. They are guided by anticipated reactions. You start editing yourself, adjusting your behavior, and filtering your thoughts, not because it feels right, but because it feels safe. Over time, this creates a gap between who you are and who you present to the world. You may appear confident, successful, or even admired, yet internally, you feel uncertain and disconnected. This happens because your actions are not rooted in authenticity. They are driven by approval, and approval, by nature, is unstable. It depends on people's opinions, moods, and expectations, all of which can change at any moment. One of the most problematic aspects of seeking validation is that it traps you in a cycle that is difficult to escape. When you receive praise, you feel a temporary sense of worth. However, this feeling quickly fades, leaving you wanting more. As a result, you begin to rely on external feedback to maintain your self-esteem. Without it, you feel inadequate. With it, you feel temporarily complete. This pattern creates emotional dependency, where your confidence is no longer self-generated but externally supplied. This dependency has serious consequences for your personal growth. If your actions are influenced by the fear of judgment, you will naturally avoid situations where failure is possible. You may delay starting a project, sharing an idea, or pursuing a goal, simply because you are afraid of how others might respond. In this way, validation-seeking behavior does not just affect how you feel. It actively limits what you do. Moreover, it weakens your ability to think independently. When you constantly look for approval, you begin to distrust your own judgment. You hesitate, second-guess yourself, and rely on others to confirm what is right. Gradually, your internal voice becomes less reliable to you, while external opinions gain more authority. This imbalance makes it increasingly difficult to make decisions with confidence. Breaking free from this pattern requires more than just awareness. It requires a shift in perspective. Instead of viewing validation as something necessary, you must begin to see it as optional. This does not mean rejecting feedback or ignoring others completely. Rather, it means redefining its role in your life. Feedback becomes a tool for improvement. It is no longer a measure of your worth. A practical way to begin this shift is to question your motivations. Before making a decision, ask yourself, am I doing this because it aligns with my values or because I want to be approved? This question forces you to confront the underlying reason behind your actions. While the answer may not always be comfortable, it provides clarity. And clarity is the first step toward change. Another essential part of this process is learning to tolerate discomfort. When you stop seeking validation, you will likely feel exposed. You may worry about being misunderstood, criticized, or even rejected. These feelings are natural, but they are not permanent. In fact, they are a sign that you are stepping outside of a conditioned pattern. The more you act without relying on approval, the more resilient you become. It is also important to develop an internal standard for self-evaluation. Instead of asking whether others approve of you, ask whether you are acting in accordance with your principles. Did you make an honest decision? Did you put in genuine effort? Did you stay true to your intentions? These questions create a more stable foundation for self-worth. This foundation does not fluctuate based on external reactions. Interestingly, when you stop seeking validation, your behavior often becomes more confident and natural. You express your thoughts more freely, take action more decisively, and accept outcomes more calmly. This kind of confidence is fundamentally different from the type that depends on praise. It is quieter, but far more stable, because it is rooted in self-trust rather than external approval. At the same time, your relationship with criticism begins to change. Instead of perceiving it as a threat to your identity, you start to see it as information. Some feedback may be useful, while some may not. The key difference is that you no longer internalize every opinion. You evaluate it, decide its relevance, and move forward without allowing it to define you. It is worth noting that the pursuit of validation is often reinforced by modern environments, especially social media. Platforms are designed to reward visibility and engagement, turning approval into measurable metrics. Likes, comments, and shares become indicators of value, even though they rarely reflect depth, authenticity, or long-term impact. This environment makes it even more important to consciously separate your self-worth from external responses. Ultimately, letting go of validation is not about becoming indifferent to others. It is about becoming grounded in yourself. You can still appreciate recognition, accept constructive feedback, and value meaningful connections. However, these elements no longer control your identity. They support it instead of defining it. Imagine what becomes possible when your actions are no longer restricted by the need for approval. You take risks more willingly because failure does not threaten your worth. You express ideas more openly because disagreement does not diminish your confidence. You pursue goals more consistently because your motivation comes from within, not from external encouragement. This shift does not happen instantly. It is a gradual process that requires consistent awareness and practice. There will be moments when you fall back into old patterns, when you seek reassurance or hesitate due to fear of judgment. However, each time you choose to act based on your own values rather than external approval, you strengthen your independence. In the end, seeking validation is not inherently wrong. It becomes problematic only when it defines you. The goal is not to eliminate the desire for approval entirely, but to ensure that it does not control your behavior. When your sense of self is internally anchored, external validation becomes a bonus, not a necessity. And perhaps the most freeing realization is this: the people whose approval you seek are often navigating their own insecurities. They are also concerned about how they are perceived, also questioning their decisions, and also seeking acceptance. Their opinions are not absolute truths. They are subjective perspectives shaped by personal experiences. Once you truly understand this, the need for validation begins to lose its power. You no longer feel compelled to meet every expectation or satisfy every opinion. Instead, you focus on living in alignment with who you are and who you want to become. And that is where real confidence begins. not in being approved by everyone, but in no longer needing to be.